Hello children and welcome to Yupp Master. We've started with Kingdom Animalia and today we're going to come into the most interesting topic of this whole chapter, and that is that of the earthworm. Now, we've learned about annelids, but in all the annelids, the most important for your NEET exam would be the earthworm. Alright, now, do you remember the scientific name for earthworm? It was Ferritima. So today, let us come and let us study together the different anatomical characteristics of the earthworm, and we will also be giving a brief input about the digestive system of this earthworm. So let's begin. What exactly is this earthworm looking like, and what are the basic characteristics of it, and also what are the distinct morphological characteristics seen in this earthworm. So we begin our whole study of the earthworm. Alright, so we see here, first of all, while studying the earthworm, before we actually get into the different systems of this earthworm, let's just see what exactly are the external features of this earthworm. Alright, so studying the external features, first and foremost, you always see that on seeing an earthworm, you will see that it is always having a long cylindrical body, right? Now, here is that earthworm, look at that over there. Now, it is a reddish brown in color, okay, and it is a terrestrial invertebrate. Remember, it belongs to the phylum of Annelida, alright. So, it is a terrestrial invertebrate, and also we see, where exactly do we find this earthworm? It is found at the upper layers of the moist, rich soil, okay. What exactly is, where exactly is this earthworms found, on which layer of soil? The soil where there is a decaying matter, okay, decaying organic matter, that is where you will find these earthworms. So soil which is rich in the decaying or the dead organic matter, this is where we find our earthworms. What are they going to do over there with that decaying matter? We will see that in a little while, okay. So first of all, we see that these are found in the moist soil that is rich in the dead decaying organic matter. We see that these earthworms are more active during night. So any animal which is more active during night time, we call these animals as the nocturnal animals, alright. So they are more active at night time. But what do they do during the daytime? Well, these earthworms during the daytime, they live in small burrows. What are burrows? Well, with the help of their anterior part of the body, we will see what those are. But with the help of those anterior parts of the body, they are able to dig into the soil, and that digging into the soil is a word which we can call it as boring, okay. It is made by burrowing and it is swallowing the soil, okay. What does it do by burrowing? Burrowing means that it is going and digging inside the soil. When it is burrowing the soil, as it goes far inside the soil layers, it consumes that soil. Remember that soil is rich in dead and decaying organic matter. So it is going to be consuming that soil and it swallows the soil. So basically this soil has now entered into its digestive system, and as it passes through its digestive system, there will be a fecal matter which is going to come out of the anus, right? Well, that fecal matter that comes out of the anus of these earthworms is going to be called as worm castings, okay. What are they called as? They are called as worm castings. So in gardens, how do we find that there is an area where their earthworms are present? It can be found by the presence of the fecal deposits of these earthworms, and these fecal deposits of the earthworms are called as worm castings. Now, why am I paying so much importance, or why am I talking so much about the fecal matter of an earthworm? Ever thought about that? We are not interested in any fecal deposits of any other animals, but the fecal deposit of an earthworm is very useful for us. Not for us, rather it is more useful for our farmers. Why is it useful for the farmers? Ever thought about that? Well, these worm castings, what were they called as? They were called as worm castings, okay. They were called as worm castings. These worm castings are, what are they made up of? What did that earthworm consume? Didn't it consume that dead decaying matter and it went into its intestine and it came out of its anus? The fecal matter that comes out of the anus is rich in nutrients, okay? And that rich in nutrients is that fecal matter which is rich in nutrients is going to benefit the plant growth. It will help in the plant germination. It will help in getting nutrition to the plant so that that plant can grow faster. In fact, it is one of the best fertilizers available for plants. So and also not only is it good for the farmer, even for indoor plants and everywhere, earthworm castings is proving to be the best fertilizer available. That is why our earthworms are friends of our farmers. All right, I hope you understand this and remember this word, worm castings. Okay, now the different earthworms that we find in India, the most common earthworms found in India would be first the Ferritima, second the Lumbricus, and third, look at that one down there, that is called as the Megascolex. We need to remember the scientific names of all of these three. First would be the Ferritima, second one called as the Lumbricus, third one called as the Megascolex. Okay, so these three are common Indian earthworms found. Alright, Ferritima, Lumbricus and Megascolex. Now, let's see some other earthworms also found in India. The largest earthworm found is called as the Dravida grandilis. Look at that size of that earthworm. Can you see how this man is holding that earthworm with the help of a stick? So imagine how large this earthworm is going to be. Along with this, if we've seen the largest earthworm in India, why not consider the smallest earthworm? And look at this earthworm. It is very tiny and it is called as Chaetogaster annandalei. Okay, so this is the smallest earthworm seen. Also, look at this earthworm here. All right. Now, this earthworm here is seen to be the largest earthworm and it is extremely big. It is found in Australia. All right. Now, when we see the external features of an earthworm, first of all, understand that this is a worm whose segments can be seen so prominently when you see this earthworm, right? So when you see this earthworm, there are so many segments. Also, we see over here, the segments which are seen on the exterior surface of that earthworm is same as those segments which are in the internal part. So, if I am saying here that the external segmentation is coinciding with the internal segmentation, can I call this segmentation as metameric segmentation? Alright, so the body here is divided into more than, there are around 100 to 120 segments in the earthworms. And those segments are individually going to be called as the metameres. Okay, you can see in these diagrams in the right side how the body is divided into so many segments, and here each and every segment is called as a metamere. How many segments for an earthworm? There are 100 to 120 segments. All right. Okay. So now after talking about the segments, we also see, if you just pick up randomly, if you pick, if there is if you're in the rainy season and if you see that there is moist soil and there is moistness outside, you may see so many or several earthworms on the surface of the road. Okay. Now, let us say you happen to pick up one earthworm. You may be able to, in a little while, we'll discuss some characteristics of which you will be able to tell where is the anterior surface and where is the posterior surface. Okay. But the first thing that I'd like to teach you right now is, if you're holding that earthworm, how will we know whether this earthworm's, where is its dorsal surface and where is its ventral surface? Okay. For us, when we're talking about ourselves, where is our dorsal surface? Our backside is our dorsal surface. Where is the ventral surface? Our front side is our ventral surface. Okay. What about an earthworm? This is a complete cylindrical structure. Well, when you pick up that earthworm, you will see that along the length of the earthworm, there will be somewhere a dark red line. Wherever you find that dark red line, that is going to indicate the dorsal surface of the earthworm. Means that that is the surface which is going to be facing towards the sun. Immediate opposite side of it is going to be called as the ventral surface of the earthworm. This is the surface of the earthworm which will be touching the ground when it's moving. So, based on where you find that dark red line is indicating a dorsal blood vessel. And that dorsal blood vessel is the marking feature of the dorsal side of this earthworm. Immediate opposite would be the ventral side. Okay, so we see here that the dorsal surface of the earthworm has a median, means in the middle, mid dorsal line. In the middle there is a mid dorsal line, and that mid dorsal line is called as the dorsal blood vessel. All right. So this is how we find out the dorsal and the ventral side of this earthworm. Now, talking about other external features, we see that on the ventral side. So now you know how to mark the dorsal side of an earthworm. Now my next question is, if you pick up the earthworm, what is it that we can find on the ventral side? On the ventral side, this earthworm has genital openings. Remember one thing, that this earthworm belonging to annelid all the annelids are hermaphrodite, which means that even the earthworm is an example where this one organism will be containing or will be having both the male genitalia and the female genital organs. Okay, so there are both present. Now the question is, the genital openings, where are they exactly located? Okay, the ventral surface is the one which is having the genital openings, both male and the female. Okay. The anterior end of this earthworm has a mouth, and the mouth here is called as the prostomium. Now you know that the word stoma indicates opening, and the opening here is that of the mouth. So the anterior end is having a mouth called as the prostomium. Can you see over here? The prostomium. Okay, that is the anterior end. Alright, what does this prostomium do? It is serving as, over here there is a covering over here, that prostomium, and can you see below over here? Here is the mouth opening. Okay, this is actually the mouth opening, and on that mouth opening you can see over here that this is the covering over there, and that is what we're going to be calling as the prostomium. Okay, so it serves as a covering for the mouth, and what does it help the earthworm do? Remember a little while back I told you that the earthworm is going to be burrowing inside the soil. Okay, so this prostomium is behaving as a covering for the mouth, and it is helping the earthworm to force itself into cracks and into the soil and crawl into it. Okay, so this helps that earthworm burrow inside if at all the soil is a little hard or if it is dry, and it helps it go into the cracks inside it. Now we see here that this prostomium, it is not a true segment, but what does it do? It is overhanging, or it overhangs the oral aperture. Oral aperture indicates the mouth over here. Okay, that is the oral aperture. Where is this prostomium? It is a covering, or it is just like a flap-like structure on top of this oral aperture. So we say that it is not a true segment, it is just overhanging. It overhangs the oral aperture. It is just on the oral aperture. Remember the name of this, it was called as the prostomium. Okay, just before the mouth. Now we see that the function of this prostomium, it is sensory in function. Because it is sensory, this prostomium will know exactly where to go and where to dig in, so that its mouth would be getting the food inside it. Okay, alright. So after the prostomium, let us come to the very first segment of this earthworm, and that very first segment is called as the peristomium. Now when we talk about the peristomium, Let's break this word up, okay? Now when we talk about stoma, you know it means mouth. What does the word peri mean? Peri always indicates something that is all around. Okay, it is indicating all around. So when I am saying that it is a peristomium, it means that this is a segment which is placed all around the mouth. Okay, so we see that the first body segment of the earthworm is called as the peristomium. All right, now this peristomium is the segment which is containing the mouth. That mouth can be called here also as the buccal segment. Okay, so there is a mouth. Where is the mouth? In the first segment. The first segment is called as the peristomium. Then there is a flap on that peristomium and we call that flap as the prostomium. So two words you need to remember here. First word is called as the prostomium. Okay. And the second word is called as the peristomium. The very first segment of the earthworm is called as the peristomium, which contains the mouth. Alright. So we see here that the peristomium surrounds the mouth and also surrounds the prostomium. Alright. So I hope these two words are clear. First word, prostomium, that is the flap. Second word, peristomium, that is the first segment, which contains the mouth. Alright. Now, remember I told you that we had seen that there is a mid-dorsal line which we called as the dorsal vessel that is going to indicate how do we locate the dorsal and the ventral side of this earthworm. Now, if we want to know how do we locate the anterior and how do we know which is the posterior side of this earthworm, how do we do this? Well, we see here that the whole earthworm is divided into 3 regions, okay, and that division is based on where you see this aperture. Okay, so can you see this aperture that I'm just marking here in blue? This whole aperture that you're seeing here, children, this aperture is called as a clitellum. What is it called as? It is called as a clitellum. So this region over here is called as the clitellar region. Now, when we see a mature worm, then I told you that every earthworm, a mature earthworm, is having around 100 to 120 segments. Okay, now from 100 segments, we see that there will always be the first segment and then the last segment. But how do we know which segment is the first one? Well, from segment number 14 till segment number 16, there is this dark band of the glandular tissue. Remember that this is a glandular tissue, and if it is a glandular tissue, then sooner or later, sometime in life, this is going to secrete. Okay, so now there is this dark band of a glandular tissue which is called as the clitellum. Now the clitellum is located at which area? Remember, it is located from segment 14 till the segment 16. Okay, so for segments 14 to 16 are covered by a dark band of glandular tissue which is called as the clitellum in a mature worm. So because of the presence of this clitellum, we see that this earthworm can be divided into 3 regions. Which are those 3 regions? The first region being the region before the clitellum, called as the preclitellar region. Second region, the clitellum itself, that is the clitellar region. Third region, the whole part of the earthworm after the clitellum, called as the postclitellar region. So 3 parts of the earthworm: the preclitellar, the clitellar and the postclitellar region. So because this is just 14 to 16, it indicates that segments 1 to 13 will be preclitellar and segments 17 till 120 would be the postclitellar. So naturally, whenever you hold an earthworm, then the region where you see the clitellar region, that will be the region before that would be where the head region, or you can call this as the anterior. This is the anterior part. The opposite region would be the posterior region. Okay, that would be the posterior part of the earthworm. Alright, so we saw now how the body of the earthworm can be divided into 3 regions based on the presence of that clitellum. Clitellum is also given another word over here. It can be called as cingulum, where cingulum means it is a belt. Okay, now also we see on the external surface for this earthworm, there are 4 pairs of spermatical apertures. Okay, 4 pairs of spermatical apertures. What is spermatica? Spermatica would be where the sperms can be stored. Okay, so there are 4 pairs of these spermatical apertures. Where exactly are these located? Let's see that. They are found, look at this word here. First, they say that it is situated on the ventrolateral sides. Now, when I say ventro, you know I am talking about the lower side that is near the floor. But then when I am saying lateral sides, then when I talk about lateral, it is on the 2 sides. When I say medial, it is in the middle. So, when we have an earthworm, then on the sides of the earthworm, you have the spermatical apertures. There are 4 pairs indicating that 4 would be on one side, 4 would be on another side. Now it is on the lateral sides. Okay. Now let us see which segments are they found in. These are found in the intersegmental grooves. Okay. What do you mean by intersegmental grooves? So you can see here that these are this is the segment. Okay. This is another segment. So this over here is the intersegmental groove. Okay, that is a groove present between 2 segments. Alright, now where are these spermatical pores? They are present on the ventrolateral sides of the intersegmental grooves between segments 5th till 9th. So here is our 5th segment, here is our 6th segment. Okay, between these two segments there is a intersegmental groove over here, and this intersegmental groove is the region where you can find this over here, and this is that aperture we are talking about. So that's one aperture there, the second one, the third one, and the 4th one. So we can see here how there are 4 intersegmental grooves, and on them there are 4 pairs of spermatical apertures. So we see that the pairs of spermatical apertures are between segments 5 to 6. Okay, the first aperture. Second aperture is between segment 6 to 7. Third aperture will be present between segments 7 to 8. That will be present right here. Okay, this is the one which is 6 to 7. This is the one which is 7 to 8. And the 4th one will be present right over here. That is between segments 8 to 9. Okay, so this is how there is the distribution of the 4 pairs of the spermatical apertures, one on this side and one would be on the other lateral side. Alright, okay, continuing further on the ventral surface, along with these spermatical apertures, we also see the presence of the genital pores. Okay, now what are these genital pores? So these are going to be through which the gametes will be transferred. First and foremost, we see that there is a pair of male genital pores. Look at where this male genital pore is, right over here. Can you see this region here? So this is where the male pore is going to be. And which segment is it? It is on the, again on the ventrolateral side. There is a pair. Okay, so when we're talking about the male genital pores, these are present in pairs. So these male genital pores here, okay, so can you see that male genital pores here? These here are present on the ventrolateral side of which segment? Segment number 18. Okay, so on segment number 18 you have a pair of male genital pores. What about the female ones? Female genital pore, there is only one. And where is it present? On the 14th segment. Do you remember one thing? Clitellum was present from segment number 14 till 16. So this means that On the clitellum, look at this region here, right here on the clitellum, you have one single female genital pore. Okay, so there are a pair of male genital pores, whereas there is only a single female genital pore. The male genital pore is on the 18th segment and the female single genital pore is on the 14th segment. I'd like you to remember that while studying the structure of earthworm, especially when we're doing the external features and ahead when we are going to study the digestive system, remember that here the number of segments is extremely important. So do not forget the number of segments. While studying earthworm, these are one of the most important points we need to take care of. Okay, so male genital pores, again, segments number 18, and female genital pore is single, segment number 14 on the clitellum. Okay, so let's continue ahead. All right, now we also see that the excretory system, okay, in an annelid, excretory waste materials come out of the body through small openings on the surface, and those small openings, can you see how these small openings are present here? Okay, so I'm just circling those small openings there. Those small openings, because they are going to be throwing out excretory waste, those small openings may be called as the nephridiopores. Remember, in earthworms, in annelids, the excretory system is made up of tubules, and those tubules were called as nephridia. Okay, the tubules were called as nephridia, and all that excretory waste is going to be coming out through small pores, and the pores are called as nephridiopores. Okay, so now where are these nephridiopores present? Well, basically they are present throughout the whole earthworm, but they start from segment number 3. So only the first and the second segment of this earthworm do not have nephridiopores. Nephridiopores we will see in detail when we talk about the excretory system. Where are they present and which types of pores are there, which types of nephridia are there. But the pores are present from the third segment till all the way till the last segment. That means that there are going to be pores from third till all the way till that 120th segment too. Okay, so there are nephridiopores present. Then we also see that on each and every segment except the first segment, except the last segment, and except on the clitellum. Okay, so 3 exceptions, that the first segment, the last. Remember the first segment. What was that first segment called as? Anyone remember? It was called as the peristomium. Okay, first segment was called as the peristomium. So excluding the peristomium, excluding the last segment, that was called as the pygidium, and excluding segments 14, 15 and 16, that is the clitellum, 14, 15 and 16. Each and every segment of this earthworm is going to have small setae. These setae are S-shaped setae. Can you see these small setae over here? These setae are going to play a significant role in locomotion for this annelid. Okay, so setae are present for performing locomotion. We see that the setae can be protruded or can be retracted. That is, in order for that earthworm to move forward or for the earthworm to move in a backward direction, the setae are present and it helps in locomotion. Okay, all right. Now let us come forward and let us see how exactly does the anatomy of this earthworm look like. Okay, when I talk about the anatomy of the earthworm, I basically want to show you how is the body wall of this earthworm being formed. Okay, so let us first see the layers of the body wall. First of all, outermost, being an annelid, it has a cuticle. Okay, and this cuticle is a non-cellular cuticle. So the outermost layer, the first layer that I am drawing, is a non-cellular cuticle. Inside there is a layer which is called as the epidermal layer, the epidermis. Okay, After the epidermis, we see that there is the presence of the outer circular muscular layer. So there are two layers of muscles here. Those two layers of muscles, out of those, the outer layer is the outer circular layer. The inner layer is called as the inner longitudinal layer. Okay, so there is an outer circular and an inner longitudinal muscle layer. Then there is an epithelial layer which is called as the coelomic epithelium. Okay, now this is the layer which is actually going to be covering, or this is the layer which is actually covering the coelom part. Okay, so that is the coelom, that is the epithelium covering the coelom, and that is called as the coelomic epithelium. So which are the layers we spoke about here? First, there is a non-cellular cuticle. Second is an epidermis. Third, outer circular muscle layer. Fourth, inner longitudinal muscle layer. And fifth, the coelomic epithelium. That coelomic epithelium is covering the coelom, inside which there will be the digestive system of this earthworm. This epithelium can be called as the parietal peritoneum. Okay, it can be called as parietal peritoneum. Now, let us just look at in detail two layers of this. The first layer I'd like to talk about is the layer of the epidermis. Okay, this epidermal layer, which layer am I talking about? I'm talking about this layer over here. Okay, so this epidermal layer we see here, what is it basically made up of? It's made up of a single layer. That is, it is single layer of columnar epithelial cells. Okay, single layer of columnar epithelial cells, and these epithelial cells are going to contain secretory glands. Okay, so this epidermal layer is made up of columnar epithelial cells which contain secretory glands. The second layer I would like to talk about is this blue layer over here, which is the coelomic epithelium. This layer, I told you a little while back also, it can be called as the parietal peritoneum. Okay, now this parietal peritoneum layer that we see, it is derived from which germ layer? It's derived from the mesoderm. Okay, it's derived from mesoderm, and this layer contains two layers. There is an outer layer and there is an inner layer. The outer layer would be the one near the muscles. The inner layer would be the one near the coelom. That outer layer is called as the outer parietal layer, and the inner layer is called as the inner visceral layer, or you may call it as the inner splanchnic layer. Okay, so that coelomic epithelium also contains two layers, outer parietal and inner visceral layer. Okay, now remember one thing, if you have any doubts while I'm teaching, if you have any doubts after this lecture, if you go back and watch the lecture, any doubts, do download our app of Yupp Master. Over there we have a portal where you can post your doubts 24/7, and I personally will be handling your doubts. So any doubts, you know where to go. Where do you go? Yupp Master app, and you post your doubt over there. Okay, so now let's continue here. So there were two layers there of the coelomic epithelium. Alright, next let's continue and we come to the next layer. Alright. Okay, now coming to the next part, we see, just take a minute. Alright. So, we're talking about the body wall, okay? Now, when we're talking about the body wall of this earthworm, what do we see here? Look at those different layers. Remember, there was a cuticle, there was an epidermis, there were the muscular layers, then there was the coelomic epithelium. Let's see over here where all those things are located, okay? The very first thing I would like you to notice over here would be the setae. Remember the setae? That S-shaped setae which was useful for locomotion. So here that is, okay? Can you see how this S-shaped setae is just distinctively seen on top of that body of the earthworm, okay? Now, I'd like you to know that this whole thing that I've drawn over here, that I've mentioned here, this whole thing is the body wall. Alright, this whole thing is the body wall. Look at the layers here. First, can you see the outermost layer over here? That is this part here. This is the cuticle layer. Okay. After the cuticle layer, can we just take some time and notice here the epidermis layer here? Okay, so this is the epidermis. What was that epidermis made up of? It was made up of these columnar cells. Can you see how beautifully drawn these columnar cells are over here? Okay, then can you see how there is another layer right under it, and that layer is called as the protractor muscle. Okay, so can you see here how over here, look at this here, first comes the circular muscle layer here. Okay, this is the circular muscle layer here. All right, here is the circular muscle. Then there is another layer, look at that here, the protractor muscle. First I'd like you to see how there is a Y-shaped muscle here. Can you see this Y-shaped muscle over here? Okay, so this is a Y shape. In that Y-shaped muscle, I'd like you to see how there is the arm region that is called as the protractor muscle. Okay, then can you see how ahead of that you can see that the base region, okay, this base region is going to be the muscular layer which helps in retraction. So that's why we say that the muscular layer has protractor muscles which is in the arm region and retractor muscle which is in the base region. Okay, so I hope that is clear for you all. Then if there is a circular layer of muscles, then there is also here a longitudinal layer of muscles that you can see. Okay, so here are the longitudinal layer of muscles that we have. All right, so you have the circular layer and then you have the longitudinal layer. Also we can see that attached to the setae we have the base of the setae. Okay, so can you see how you have this base of the setae over here, and this is the whole cell from where, or this is the whole sac in which the setae is situated. Okay, all right, so that is the sac of the setae, and after that in the lowermost region you can see here how there is the coelomic epithelium. Okay, so this is that coelomic epithelial layer that we were talking about. Okay, inner to that you have the circular muscular strand. Okay, so that is present here. Now this is the whole width of the body wall. Immediately after the body wall, inside, I'm talking about this region over here. Okay, so this whole region over here, just after the body wall, this is the region which would be called as the region of the coelom. So this is where you would have the coelom. Okay, so this is the coelom layer, and if this is the coelom region, then this is the region where you would have the digestive system. So when we're talking about the body wall of this earthworm, can you say that this is the body wall on one side? It is a cylindrical structure, so body wall on the other side. Okay, where this would be the dorsal part having this whole layer over here. Okay, inside the whole body of that earthworm, this region here, this is where you would have the whole digestive system, and this is the region which I could call as the, what could I call this as? The coelom. Okay, so this is the layer of the coelom. All right, okay, so I hope this is clear. The wall layers of that earthworm, okay, talking about the cuticle, the epidermis, the muscular layers, and even the protractor muscles, the retractor muscles, and the longitudinal muscles. And finally, we also have the coelomic epithelium. Okay, now continuing ahead, we see that this coelom that we were talking about, okay, the coelom over here is called as a schizocoelom. What is a schizocoelom, and let's see how it looks like. Okay, this schizocoelom, look at the two types of coeloms here. First schizocoelom is, first of all, this is the schizocoelom where here we see that the mesoderm layer, okay, that mesoderm has differentiated near the blastopore. Okay, so can you see here how this is the region? Okay, let me mark that in red. This is the region how where that mesoderm is found. So it is differentiating near the blastopore. Okay, this is the schizocoelom. Another type of coelom which is seen is where this is called as the enterocoelom, where that mesoderm is going to form out pockets of the archenteron. Here is the archenteron region, and this that you're seeing here is the mesoderm, and you can see that it is forming out pockets. So in an enterocoelom, the Mesoderm is being a part of the coelom, whereas in a schizocoelom, this is where we have the mesoderm located. Okay, so we see here in the schizocoelom, the fluid that is present inside the schizocoelom is going to be providing a hydrostatic skeleton. Okay, so it is that fluid which is present in this coelom which is allowing contractions of the muscles, which allows this animal to locomote. Okay, so that's why this is called as a hydrostatic skeleton here. Okay, now seeing ahead, we come to next the digestive system of the earthworm. Okay, this is the very first system that we are going to be dealing with. In our remaining lectures, we will be learning about the different other systems of the earthworm. So we started off with the external features. We studied all the different segments that are involved. We studied also how did we find out which is the dorsal surface, how did we find out which is the ventral surface. We also studied about the three different regions of this earthworm. 14 to 16 was a band which we called as the clitellum. Before the clitellum, the region was called as the preclitellar region, clitellar region. After the clitellum, we call it as the postclitellar region. Then on the dorsal surface, there was a red dark line. It was called as the dorsal blood vessel. On the ventral surface, there were those genital openings. The male genital pore was on the 18th segment. Female genital pore was, the single female genital pore was on the 14th segment. Remember all these points. Okay, so these were all the external features of the earthworm. We also studied about the anatomy, where we learnt about the different layers of that body wall. Now let us come to one by one the digestive system of the earthworm. Okay, we begin here that, as I told you before also, that while talking about earthworm, while studying earthworm, the most important part would be the segments. Okay, now in the digestive system, there's going to be a lot of segments which we'll be studying. Okay, so we just try to remember in a sequence how we're going to differentiate these segments. First, what we do is we're going to remember the names of the different parts of this earthworm's digestive system. Always we know the whole digestive system will always begin with the region which we call as the mouth. Okay, now mouth is going to be terminal in position, the very first segment. And what was that called as? It was called as the peristomium. Remember that? So mouth is located at the region of the peristomium, and that is the first segment. Okay, so that is the mouth. After the mouth, it opens into this region that you're seeing here, and this is the region which is called as the buccal cavity. What is that region called as? It is called as the buccal cavity. So buccal cavity is located between segments 1 to segment number 3. Okay, so 1 to 3 are buccal cavity. Okay, after buccal cavity comes the pharynx. Over here, the pharynx is a muscular pharynx. Okay, so this muscular pharynx is able to take in the dead and decaying soil, and it can take it inside. Okay, so that muscular pharynx is located on the fourth segment. Okay, so fourth segment, muscular pharynx. After that pharynx would come a narrow esophagus. So esophagus starts from segments number 5 and it will last all the way up till segment number 7. So just see right from the very first segment of the mouth up till that of the esophagus, you have the mouth, the buccal cavity, the muscular pharynx and a narrow esophagus. So you have segments number 1 to 3, segment 4, segment 5th to 7th one. After the esophagus, we have the muscular gizzard. What is this gizzard? The gizzard is going to be helping in grinding. You remember, it is consuming all that dead and decaying matter. So the gizzard will help in grinding all of that. So there is a muscular gizzard which is present from segment 8 and 9th. Okay, so 2 segments are containing this gizzard. After the gizzard, we have the actual stomach, and the stomach is ranging from segment number 9 till all the way up to segment number 14. So remember this number 9 to 14. Mouth, buccal cavity, pharynx, esophagus, the gizzard, and finally comes the stomach. Stomach, remember the range, segment 9 all the way till segment 14. Okay. After the stomach would come the intestine. Now, the intestine is the longest part in the whole digestive system. Intestine begins from segment number 15 and it lasts all the way up till the end because it has to reach all the way up till the anus. So, from segment 15 till the last segment, we have the intestine. Okay, now in the intestine, there will be different regions here, and let's study those regions within the intestine itself. In the intestine, first we see the structure called as intestinal caecae. This intestinal caecae, if it is caecae, this is just like when we're going to study cockroach, we see these are the parts of the intestine which are going to be secreting some digestive enzymes so that it can help in digestion of that dead and decaying matter which the earthworm has consumed. So, this intestinal caecae is found in segment number 26. Okay, so in 26 segment, we have intestinal caecae present. After intestinal caecae, we have a whole fold. Okay, what is this fold now when we talk about intestine? Even in our intestine, there are so many infolds which we call as villi. Okay, so basically, if I just draw a circular region here, okay, and if this I am telling you that this is a longitudinal section of the intestine taken, then we see that there are many infoldings. Okay, many infoldings are present. Why? Just to increase surface areas. So there are so many infoldings present, but out of all of these infoldings, there's going to be one infolding which is very big. Can you see how this infolding is extremely big? And this infolding which is big, this infolding is what I am going to call as the typhlosole. Okay, so that typhlosole is one big infolding present and it is ranging from segment number 25 all the way up till segment number 35. Remember, this section that I've told you, this is a longitudinal section, but it will be long. So we see here that all of those infoldings are present throughout the intestine, but this one long infold is going to be present from segment 25 all the way up till segment number 35. Okay, that one large infold is what is going to be called as the typhlosole. Remember, the intestine was from 15th till the last segment, and in that whole range of the intestine, you have first the intestinal caecae which was present on the 26th segment. Then from 25 till 35th segment, we have the typhlosole, and after the typhlosole, the whole intestine is going to continue until that last segment, the 100 or 120th segment, and finally in the terminal segment you will have the anus. Alright, so we saw over here the names and the numbers of all the different segments, which segment contains which part of the digestive system. Okay, so we see here that the mouth is found to be terminal in position. Buccal cavity ranges from segments 1 to 3. The muscular pharynx comes right after the buccal cavity, that is only segment number 4. Segment 5 to 7 contain a narrow esophagus. The muscular gizzard is found in segments 8 to 9. Okay, now after 8 to 9 we need to remember one range, that is for the stomach. Stomach ranges from segments 9 to 14. Okay, so basically you need to remember these ranges here. The remaining you can see are all in pairs. 1 to 3, 2 segments, 5 to 7, another 2 segments, 8, 9, another 2 segments, 9 to 14 is the big range, and that range is there for stomach. Okay, Then comes segment number 15, and segment number 15 is going to be from the starting, that is the intestine, all the way up till the last segment, that is up till segment number 120, or however many segments that earthworm contains. Now in the intestine, remember, there were CK glands which will secrete to help in digestion, which is on segment number 26. And most important, for maximum absorption, there's going to be presence of a typhlosole. What is that typhlosole? It is the largest infold present, and that was what we just marked over here. Okay, so this is that typhlosole that we had marked, and typhlosole is present from segment 25 till segment number 35. Then after 35, the intestine is going to continue, and the intestine continues all the way up till the very last segment. So children, I hope that this whole concept of the digestive system of this earthworm is clear to you. Okay, now what did we study today? Today we first started with the general characteristics of the earthworm. Okay, general characteristics of the earthworm. We also talked about the external features of the earthworm, and we saw that in the external features we saw how to locate the dorsal side. Okay, we also saw how to locate the ventral side. Dorsal side had a vessel, blood vessel, and ventral side is the part which had the genital pores. Okay, then we saw that the earthworm's whole body can be divided into 3 regions. Which were those 3 regions? The first region was called as the preclitellar. Second region was called as the clitellar, and the third region was called as the postclitellar. So we had the 3 regions of the whole body of that earthworm. Then we also spoke about the how we saw that the different apertures were present. Okay, remember, there were apertures like the spermatical pores. Spermatical pores were present from, or you can write here, spermatical pores from segment number 5 till 9th. They were present in the intersegmental. Okay, intersegmental they were present. Also we saw the presence for locomotion. We had structures which were called as S-shaped setae, and these setae were present all throughout the earthworm except, remember, except the first, the last, and the clitellum. Everywhere else the setae was present for locomotion. Okay, then we went on and we studied the anatomy. When we studied the anatomy, we basically studied the body wall, and in the body wall we saw that there was the presence of different layers of the body wall. First we had a cuticle, which was non-cellular. Then we had the epidermis, which was made up of columnar cells. Then we had the layers of muscles, the outer circular, the inner longitudinal, longitudinal layers, and then we had the coelomic epithelium. This was the whole body wall, and inside that body wall there was the presence of the coelom. The coelom in an earthworm was called as the schizocoelom. Remember that schizocoelom? That schizocoelom was filled with coelomic fluid. Okay, and the coelomic fluid helped in creating the hydrostatic skeleton. All right, so these are the different points that we had discussed about the earthworm. All right, so today we also discussed about the different parts of the earthworm, the different parts of the digestive system of this earthworm. In our next lecture we will go forward and we will continue and we will complete all the other systems of the earthworm. The vascular system means the circulatory system, the excretory system, the nervous system. We will talk about in details all of those systems too, so that this topic of earthworm is very clear for you for your NEET exams. Okay, many children do come to me, ma'am, what about earthworm, what about frog and earthworm? So right now children, get your earthworm, all the concepts very clear in these two lectures. All right, 2 hours, earthworm is done. All right, so any doubts, I remind you once again, be smart, go to the Yupp Master app, download the app, and you have a portal for asking your doubts to me. I personally will be taking care of your doubts on that portal. All right, so next time in your comment section, I want you to ask all your doubts here also. I'd like you to post your comments. I'd like you to hit the like button if you haven't done that until now. Subscribe to our channel and do go and download the app, and you can ask me all your questions. Also, if this lecture has if you've understood this lecture well and you want to test yourself and just see how questions do come about the earthworm, come to our app, come to the Yupp Master app, and you will see that there are just 10 to 15 questions which are given to you. Very easy questions. If you've understood this lecture, those questions will be solved in a jiffy, and see the questions which are given in the exercise right below this very lecture on our app. All right. So until our next lecture, children, you guys stay home. I'd like you to stay safe and keep studying and stay online with us here at Yupp Master. Till then, our next lecture, you guys take care. See you.